What we are doing here today is I've been thinking about a few different things, and I shared today or this morning as I woke up um, some thoughts about what's going on right now. And I realize that we are, once again, as a planet, every week it seems like we're trying to define what our normal will be. And it seems likely, it seems clear that the effects of the COVID 19 impact on the planet won't be sorted out for a long time. What a living will look like. We might not ever go back to the exact way that we were before as a planet, or as, on a small scale level, even within our own houses. Things may be different for the long term. We don't Many of you absolutely are feeling every day the impact of this on a global level and on a small level. And in fact, when I do watch the news every now and then, I am made aware of yet another way that I hadn't even considered that this situation is affecting the whole planet. And I'm hearing a lot of different viewpoints. I'm hearing a lot of different advice. I'm hearing a lot of different science. Some of it, and I have to laugh because the thing to remember as we go through this, there's a few things to remember. One is that I really don't want to lose my whole computer because I'm making it work too hard. I can hear it. You can hear it complaining, and I'm getting messages saying, "You're hurting me, computer." Okay, let's try that now. Hopefully there's still enough processing power here. I had too many things open at once. Yeah, I do think I have frozen. Oh, my camera's still on. I'm going to keep going. So there's a few things to remember here. It is life affirming for us to get clear about where we want to put our energies right now, where we want our emotional state to be. And it makes no difference, really, if you think that this situation has been handled very poorly on a governmental level, or if you believe the whole thing is a hoax or a conspiracy, or if you think that this is Mother Nature's way of getting our attention and crying out for some relief. And it just really doesn't matter who was right or wrong, even, walking down the street, what your neighbors are doing. On a global scale, that doesn't matter. However, there are some things that do seem to matter as far as the collective consciousness goes and mutual respect for us as a humanity. And I'm not here to talk about that today. But I do want to make a point that what we do have a choice about, because many of those things, like, is it a hoax? Is it a conspiracy? Is it, what's the science this week? What's the science going to be next week? What is our government going to say? What are going to be the long range and short term economic impacts of all of this, the health impacts? It's affecting so many things. But the thing is that we absolutely have a choice about how we are moving through this reality. We have a choice about how we feel about it. We have a choice about our own actions in it. And that is an amazing power to possess. And we should not take it lightly, and we shouldn't underestimate its power in getting us through and preparing us for the amazing life that we have to come. And I'm aware that there are many of you listening to this because you quietly tell me sometimes that you kind of like what's going on right now, not on a global level, but that you like the effect that it's had on your life. You are enjoying spending time with your family more. You're enjoying being at home, not being in traffic so much, not having so much on the calendar. You're able to focus on household things like you haven't been before. And I also know that there are many of you that is maybe the case, but also on the other side of that, you have people who are affected by this, with their health. You have people that are affected economically. You are perhaps affected economically. You're lonely, you're missing human touch, missing human interaction in person. Of course, we have plenty of interaction that's not in person with things like this and Zoom. And I want you to take a deep breath right now and know that whatever your experience is with this, with what's going on now, moment to moment, hour to hour, day to day, week to week, month to month, that it's not right or wrong what you're feeling here. And what you're feeling is never right or wrong. So feel what you feel and let it move through. And what if it's true that this time on our planet is an opportunity for many of us to remember that amazing internal power and strength that we have, not only to remember it, but to make it stronger. The interesting thing is that throughout our life, we will have things that happen that are a mark where things will never be the same again. Like the death of a loved one, the birth of a child, a big career decision, the termination of a job, being the victim of a crime, or experiencing an accident that leads to injuries, a traumatic event of another kind, a divorce, a marriage, a recovery. There's many other times in our life that we can look at, the times to come and the times that have passed, that we can identify that from that point on, life wasn't the same. The interesting thing right now is that the planet, for the most part, is in this place together, where we may have a new normal. Oftentimes I think about 9/11, or if I watch a movie that took place before 9/11, September 11th, 2001, and I see like an airport scene or something else, and I remember like, oh, well, we will never be like that again. The way we used to, we could pick people up at the gates and walk your grandmother to her gate. We used to be able to do that. And it may be a similar thing with all of this, that things will not be exactly the same afterwards. And so how are we okay with that? How can we get okay with that? And the first piece of this, and I'll speak about this in just a second, is that being aware of what we're feeling and how it is impacting our thoughts and our actions is a powerful, important step. So we will get many chances to move through changes and challenges in our life. It won't be this one. The thing is that you can start now. You can start today. You can start in any moment. You can start right where you are, doing it from an elevated place. And I want you to hear me that I do not see a single soul as broken. Nobody is in need of being fixed. Nobody has to change. I shoulda, coulda, woulda. I endeavor to drop that from my vocabulary. However, I am aware that when I myself have decided to expand, to bring into balance some aspect of my life that didn't feel imbalanced, that the elevating effect that choice had on my life was well worth it and improved my life in some way, in a way that I judged as improvement. So I think it was Carl Rogers who said that it was something like, when I fully accept where I am and what's going on in my life, then I am able to change. So change on the inside is a choice. The change that happens outside of us is out of our control. So we have a unique situation here, one that can be interpreted as extremely stressful. And it's also an opportunity. And where you stand on that line, you could stand on that line in the same 10 seconds, back and forth. I invite you to look for ways to stand on the side of elevating, because it is a unique opportunity. There are so many people here with us now that are feeling the tightness, feeling the anxiety, and there is something else that we can also choose. You are absolutely a free soul, a liberated soul. And what happens outside of you does not define your inner state. It doesn't have the power to determine your joy. The thing is that many of us have forgotten that, and we have had life experiences that have led us to believe that it is truth that our joy and our happiness is defined from outside of us. And I hear you, and I have a lot of compassion for you. And sometimes I forget that too. And so having ways of coming back to that, what I believe is truth, that my peace and my calm, my happiness, my joy comes from within. So that no matter what is happening, I can come back to center. So what if it's true that true happiness comes when we remember that we are the creators of our life? We are not just responders and reactors to what happens, but we create our own experience by deciding how we will look at what is going on, how we will interact with it. I sometimes, it seems like I told this story this week to a client. I was reading probably 10 years ago when I was suffering much. My mom was living with us with terminal cancer, 2 young kids, running a business out of the dining room with my husband. He was at the office, I was at home. And there was a lot going on, and I was spinning. And I read an article about a meditator, someone who had been meditating for a long time, 10 years, say. And he was involved in a large airliner going down. So there were 100 some people on board, and about half of them survived and half of them didn't. And he had to get out of the plane, the smoky, thick smoke pouring through that plane. And he was aware that he had to take an action. He was aware that he was afraid, and he was aware that he had some choices there that could save his life. The woman in front of him was not able to be calm in that moment. Neither were people behind him. He was able to speak to the woman in front of him. It may have even been his wife, don't remember. And make decisions to get through the plane, even in the midst of life and death fear inside of him. He was able to stay calm and see and sense where to go in the dark. And the people in front of him got out of the plane. And I remember hearing that story, and I thought about that lately, because this was extreme fear. You have choices, and you either live or you die. Oftentimes we feel that way, that we might live or die, but the actual reality does not match that situation. But this was a case of that. And he remembers being able to stay calm, stay in the moment, decide what's next. I always have found that so powerful because of the extremeness of the story. So, and it gives me hope that we can all do this. When we are calm and centered, it's very easy to remember that happiness, calm, peace isn't defined by what happens outside of us, by what our inner landscape is. That's what defines us. However, we are not always so calm and peaceful. We're not always having such an easy time accessing that place. And some of us haven't felt it for decades. It's still there and you can access it. But to be able to remember that our happiness is not decided on outside circumstances, it's a very personally empowering place to be. And it's for everyone. It's not just for some people or a few people, some people who do a lot of Qigong, some people who do a lot of yoga, who meditate. It's for anyone. And those things that I just mentioned can certainly help get you there. So, in the interest of what we're doing here today, how can we get there? How can we handle when we don't feel so calm and centered inside and we don't remember so well that when the bombs are falling all around us, that we actually can be in the quiet place amidst the bombs, amidst the bombs. You know what I'm saying? Among the bombs. My suggestion to you is to begin to practice non-judgmental personal awareness about what is going on with the talk up here in the mind. And start doing this before the bombs start to fall, before you're in, the plane as it's diving, before you're in a situation that taxes your emotions, your physical body. Start practicing this. So what do I mean by non-judgmental personal awareness? It means noticing what that self-talk is, noticing your own decisions in certain situations, and simply being a kind and benevolent observer, a compassionate observer to what you see as you observe yourself. It's very easy to not like what we see when we do this, maybe to loathe it, to resent it about yourself when we start to look at ourselves. So if that's your tendency, I would remind you that that would not be non-judgmental. The non-judgmental, benevolent awareness would be, oh, isn't that interesting that I had that thought when I heard that on television, when I saw that person interviewed? Oh, isn't it interesting that when I heard what she's doing during lockdown, that I became very jealous? Isn't it interesting? Isn't it interesting? How curious is that? These types of words and these types of phrases give you a little more space to be non-judgmental about what you are seeing and hearing within yourself, within your own self-talk and in actions. Yeah, usually sometimes we act and we haven't even figured out what the story was behind it. So we can do this with our actions too. It also, the awareness, you can go a step further, and I'll speak about this on another day, but going a step further to accept that you feel that way. Being aware of how you feel and what your choices were and maybe what led to them, and bringing some piece of laying it down to that. Okay, oh, I this is my pattern, I do this. I know exactly why I do this. And letting that be okay. So for the next couple of minutes on this call, on this video, I wanted to ask you what it is that you do. What is you can call it your shadow, you can say your life negating thoughts, life negating actions that you take when you're faced with the fear of change, when you don't like what's happening. What are the emotional states that you go to? So think about that right now, and you can make this coronavirus COVID situation an example of, take your emotions around that. Frustration, the sadness. What are the places that you contract? So what is the shadow of this? Many of us are feeling very out of control because we have forgotten that the only thing that we can control is what's inside of us, what our thoughts are, what our actions are. So the shadow side, when we forget that, is that we try to manipulate situations, could be. Or we might go into a place of feeling completely helpless and a victim of circumstance. Or because they are behaving that way, I get to behave this way too, in a way that creates tension in my life. They deserve to be talked to this way because they snapped at me. What is your shadow self? What do you do when you're faced with situations that you don't like? And we do different things, right? Usually we do different things. Check in about envy, jealousy. And if you have something to write on, I would invite you to be aware of what those shadows are, of what those life negating things are, of what those things are that you do or you feel when there's tension in your emotional state and you don't feel so calm and centered, right? And again, don't make that bad or wrong. If you choose to evolve, to elevate that place, to move it into the opportunity to have new experience around meeting up with things that you don't like, how would you feel instead? What would you like to feel instead? So oftentimes when I ask this question to people, I never know what people are going to say, but more often than not, people will say, I just want to not care about it. I just want to not care. Like not even paid any attention. So there's different, that could be apathy. That could be not minding. Be aware of what would really not have a cost to you emotionally. What is the way that you would like to feel instead when things happen that you don't like? Acknowledging that you may stay for a few minutes, a few moments, some time in a place of anger, blame, envy, places that cause constriction in us. And I want to remind you that as we're talking about this, that I am very clear that you are not broken, that you don't need to be fixed. And it may be true that you recognize that the places that you live in this shadow, in the life negating emotional states for a long time, and you get stuck, broken record, stuck, that living there for a long time has a cost to you, and you choose to elevate, to heal, to move to a new place. So again, doing this sort of conversation is not about making anybody feel bad. This is exciting. This is exciting because there are possibilities for other ways of doing this. So sometimes people ask me how, when I can't get off the broken record and I keep feeling the emotional state, how do I move through this? How do I remember again peace and calm? But happiness doesn't come from without, it comes from within. I haven't mentioned it yet in this conversation, but having enough internal life energy, having it in the right balance, having a superfluous or the right amount, the quantity of internal energy really matters. And how you get that in a way that also enhances the quality of that energy it also matters. And that is for another conversation as well. But if you read through the private group, I speak of it a lot. So there's that. We have to have enough gas in our car to go. And the other thing is, we have to practice doing it. We have to practice being in one state and spending some time in another. And if we have spent a really long time in the state of, say, resentment, in the state of anxiety, it may seem like it's difficult to pull the curtain back from that. However, you can do it. And what I would suggest to you is that you take that state that is causing you tension, that keeps you from remembering that happiness does not come from outside, but is within, can be within if you cultivate that. Is I would invite you to take what you don't like, and for a moment, your anger at this person, your stories about that trauma, in these 10 seconds, decide to lay it down. Just put it over here on the table next to you and start with 10 breaths in appreciation, and gratitude, and love, and compassion, and things that expand the heart. Just 10 seconds. It's still right there. If you want to go back to the stories, if you want to go back to looking at it, and that is perfectly fine. And then after you lay it down, come back to the practice. If you do Pangi Shenggong, do the practice for 15, 20 minutes. If you do method, whatever, and decide to lay down the things that are causing this idea of obstacle in your life, this idea of struggle, this idea of things I do not like creating my reality. No, you're giving your power away. So I'm going to end this, and we'll do a little bit of breathing, and then I'll let you go. What I would like you to remember, though, is that we're in a situation as a globe. Every day we have new information, and it's likely that things will not go back to exactly the way they were. The thing is, do they ever? Do they ever? And how can we be okay with that? How can we not mind what happens? We can. It takes practice. And if it seems impossible, I would take all of the story that you have of impossible, all of the feelings, the pain, maybe you're having physical pain right now, or you have had it, and for a period of time, just lay it down. Lay it down. Do a practice for 10 seconds, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever it is, and it's still there. You're not trying to talk yourself into letting it all go forever and ever, although you may be able to do that in one sitting. That happens all the time. But don't make it about that. Make it about the practice of opening the space, of opening the heart. Okay. I hope that some of this recorded. For now, let's get into a space where you can breathe with me for a few minutes. Have your palms up, lay them in your lap. And if you're able to, you can leave your eyes open and put your attention, your visual attention, on something that doesn't have an emotional charge to it. Maybe if you're near a window, you can stare out of it. And if there's nothing around that can allow you to be absorbed in it in a non-emotional way, then close the eyes. Inhale and exhale. Imagine that you are observing yourself. doing this breathing, doing this watching. And be a benevolent observer. What the mind is doing now. And in these next few minutes, as you breathe, become aware of anything, any thought that creates tension, any thought of judgment about what comes across the mind, or something that's happening outside yourself that you're judging. See if you can bring non-judgmental personal awareness to it instead. In every place that seems hard to do in this moment, imagine that you just take that sentiment and you lay it down next to you. You come back to the breath and awareness of the breathing. Focus on the space at the top of the spine, where the spine and the neck, the spine and the skull meet. Inhale into the base of the skull there. Inhale and expand the breath out from that space as well, like there's a giant mouth from the back of your head, inhaling and exhaling through the top of the spine, base of the skull. Again, if other thoughts come up that aren't focusing on this, lay them down, come back to the breathing. Non-personal, non-judgmental personal awareness. Open-heartedness for what you experience. Laying down for 10 seconds, 10 minutes, maybe for 10 months, 10 years, whatever's of tension. No judgment for how long it takes. Breathe into the base of the skull, exhale out. Breathe into this space that's just behind the top of the head. It's where a baby's soft spot is when they're born. Back of the skull, top back of the skull. Breathe into that space. Let's seep into the brain there. Exhale out in all directions. Now bring in throughout the whole body. Inhale through all of the skin. Rose golden light. Rose golden light. Shimmery golden light into all the skin. Exhale into whatever you're sitting on, into the floor. Very nice. You're welcome to stay with that last little bit. Thank you for listening. Let me know if you have any questions. Let me know if the ability to access that calm place and to stay there continues to elude you. I would be more than happy to share some more things with you about how to access that for more of your day. Thanks.